Glad tidings, rapscallions, it's me, Mucky Mitts, and here we are for another episode of It's Okay to Suck and Start Again, which is quite apt because this is the last day in this abode. Well, I've not been here for 2 weeks, I've not slept here for 2 weeks, or over 2 weeks anyway, as I have been at my new place. But I've come to get the rest of my belongings and give it a little bit of a clean and stuff like that. But this is predominantly where I've done my It's Okay to Suck and Start Again. And so no, what I was going to talk about is the books that I've been reading recently. But I'm going to talk about instead, because I have never lived, apart from my family home, in anywhere consecutively for 4 years. And to be honest, I'm like I'm no longer I suppose when I move out today, I'm no longer the longest serving housemate in this house, which again is another achievement. And I've seen many people come and go from all different parts of the world, and been blessed to live with some great people. Maybe one or two people that I didn't quite get along with, which is weird for me because I generally get on with most people unless I don't. So yeah, so it's kind of like a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Mixed emotions, I guess. A mixed bag of feelings about leaving somewhere that I've been for 4 years. But it's also made me realise that I actually don't think I don't like doing 4 years consecutively in a place, because you accumulate stuff and crap and things. So I think there's lessons to be learned from, but it has been good in the ways of every time you move, obviously you've got to find a new deposit. You're sometimes going to risk not getting your deposit back from the previous place, you know, like, so there's all these sort of like things that you have to consider when moving. And like, very fortunate because I've got my own place, something that I've so wanted, and I've been very patient for so long. But I you know, one of the things is the guy, you know, the landlord that I've had, it's been dead sound. You know, he took a bit of a punt on me when I moved back to, you know, sort of northwest England from living in Belfast for 3 years. Which, funnily enough, the house in Belfast was possibly like the last place that I'd lived the longest after. But now this one obviously trumps it. So I guess like one thing that I've been talking about is moving back to Australia, and there's like a calming feeling about moving to my own apartment. Like, it is in the city, in the town centre, and there is a lot of hustle and bustle and stuff like that. And I do, you know, it's 2 weeks and it's going to take a little bit of adjusting to the different noises and stuff like that. But overall, you know, it's made me think maybe it's not so much the fact that like I need to move to another country. Maybe I just need my own space, and I have got like 12 months in this place till August next year if I want it. So again, I can still get a good head of steam, but I'll have been in the same town for 5 years then, which again, I mean, there's nothing really wrong, and like, this is where I'm like sort of like, I hate the weather in England. I was a bit concerned about potentially a certain person getting in and a certain party getting in, but then I look at it like, how does that really affect me? Like, really, like, how does that sort of actually sort of, in the bold stroke things, I adapt. Like, if something's going to happen, I adapt accordingly and stuff like that, you know. And you know, the global P word, we won't say the global P word, was obviously sort of a very bad time for a lot of people, but you know, and it almost finished me in a way in terms of finances and things like that, but I bounced back quicker. But now, you know, it's okay to suck and start again, and we start a new journey. We look at something different and whatnot. Now, obviously, so I will sort of like, that's just basically just a little bit of spam really about what what's going on in my life, and just how that's made me change my sort of decision about potentially moving to Australia. Because the other side of the coin is what you've got to take into consideration when you're moving to like the other side of the world, is the fact that it's very expensive. Like, and I've been kind of thinking, is that the answer? Is that where I need to go? Like, am I going there just because I feel, like, it seems quite an extreme measure. But like, when I look back at like how much it's going to probably cost me to leave and move to the other side of the world, and then, maybe it's completely resetting and starting again, isn't it? I think to myself, well, is that the answer? Is that the longing I need? Is that the thing that I need to sort out in my life? Or is it the fact that, I could spend that same amount of money and have an absolute amazing different experience, like doing all sorts of other things, and gaining, like, I could travel for a while. I could go to some like cheaper living countries where I could maybe like spend 6 months here and 6 months there, and maybe just go and get that out of my system. Because I feel like that's one thing that I realise, being in one place for a long period of time, is the fact that it's not really in my nature to be able, like I say, it's hard to be annoyed at it because it's actually really, really good. The fact that I've been in one place and I've grown as a person. I'm in a much better place financially, and just in general, just overall, like by the end of sort of May next year, I'll have finished my uni degree, and that again offers, may open more doors. So whereas I was like under the pump and trying to do this sort of like visa as quick as I possibly could, I've come to realise I've actually got a year before I do that. Now, I'm going to get off the subject of myself a little bit, because what I want to talk about is this page and where I want to take it. And it's just been because there's been a little bit of upheaval recently in my own, not in a weird bad way, just the fact that like when you move and everything's a little bit all in the air. But I have been reading a book a week. I've just finished I've been reading I've read 6 books in 6 weeks. So we're into week 7. I'll start a new book maybe this evening. But I think I'm going to go with a fiction book tonight, because I've read 6 self-help books, 6 quite heavy, I need to take time to unpack a lot of the information in my head. But what I do want to do to maybe help grease the wheels of that a little bit is I want to maybe look at every week when I finish a book, I'm going to start reading with a highlighter. I'm going to do what I do when I study, and I'm going to start highlighting, important bits that I feel that are going to, because I know a lot of people don't like to read, which I find, each of their own. Some people like to sit there and watch, and we'd be in a world where there'd be no point me making this video if there weren't people who liked sitting on social media and watching videos and things like that. But the idea is to take the information from each one of these books, not review it as such, but just take out, samples of like what I feel like the important lessons from these books are. Now, some of the books that I've read are getting quite repetitive, because they obviously sort of all bounce, they all bounce around similar sort of concepts, similar ideas. I feel like Chris Bailey's Hyperfocus isn't too different from the deep work that I've just read by Cal Newport. Both have little difference, but then I can sort of reflect back to another book that I read years ago called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And again, I felt like that was quite ahead of its time, because this was way before people was working from home. This was way before, and for me personally, as a barber, as somebody who doesn't deal like in knowledge work as it's been framed in this latest book, I don't feel like a lot of the stuff that we talk about, like emails, I don't have to answer emails and stuff like that. So like, I don't spend a hell of a lot of time looking at like things like that. So whereas, obviously you might do. So like, it's not about what I get from the book, it's where I can find, like, if I can put myself in your shoes of working in an office and try and help you maybe sort of look at how you can use your time at work more effectively and efficiently, and hopefully open up more doors for you to be able to do something more by yourself and things like that. So that's the kind of idea where I want to go to, because that It's Okay to Suck and Start Again is all about, you know, maybe finding a different career path, maybe, you know, your relationship just fell apart, maybe the idea is to sort of like almost not be a self-help book, but like kind of guide people from, and I'm not saying this is going to gather a massive audience, but we've all got to, at some point, we're going to have something in life that we're going to find challenging. And if I can be your lighthouse on a stormy ocean, you know, on a stormy night, out to sea, and I can guide you into port a little bit. But there's something that came into my head the other day. I was writing a song the other day, and what did I say? It was something like, you know, God, I can't even remember. It was that good. No, it's gone. But again, it'll probably pop in my head in about 5 minutes when I've come off the video. But basically, along the lines of, you know, a boat with no sails or no way to steer can never, you know, never basically docks in port. You know, so again, you know, that I think like that's kind of a bit of advice I need to take for myself. It's like, you know, if you don't have a plan, and you don't, you know, you're like a boat without a rudder, or, you know, a way of, you know, and you've also got no real, there's nothing to push you, nothing to drive you. So if you've got nothing in your sails, you know, or you haven't even got your sail, you know, if the sails aren't, and it is a case of trying to find something that you enjoy doing in life, because we've got, you know, we're on this big spinning rock of, you know, in a you know, massive vastness of, and we can sometimes be guilty of thinking like our problems are a lot, and so I'm not discounting that some people have some like really serious problems going on in life. I know going from my own past, which we're not going to keep raking up, that times can be difficult, and sometimes maybe you need an objective voice that maybe just resonates with you sometimes, because the people you expect to help you don't always help you. You know, like, oh man up, pull your socks up, you'll be fine, you know, because a lot of people, like, you know, maybe it's the discomfort of knowing that somebody that they know is going through difficult times, and sometimes it's the people that I don't know very well or have in the past, who've helped me with more things than some people. And I'm not saying my friends have been terrible and useless and stuff like that, but I've lived away, you know, from my friends and my family for quite some time now. So like, my problems, I am a solution-based person, so I'm, you know, and it is quite difficult sometimes to put myself back in that place 16 years ago, where I was just a shadow of myself now. Like, if I look back at who that person was 16 years ago, like where I was at, this, you know, I was unemployed, I couldn't get a job, I couldn't, I don't think I spent a day sober, you know, for months and months and months, like, and you know, I nearly destroyed myself completely, and that's hard now. Like, even when I tell people that that's the person I was, and that's how, and that's kind of where sometimes it's not like, oh, look at me, I managed to sober up and stuff like that. Like, at the end of the day, sometimes you get people who hit rock bottom and they stay there and they dwell there, and that's the end. And other people get to rock bottom, and it creates the motivation. You know, when you crawl out of that deep dark hole of like, you know, that sort of horrible, where you feel like every day you just have to, you know, like, sometimes you've got to take it an hour at a time, half a day at a time, then it becomes a week at a time, and then suddenly you've chipped away at things. And you know, one of the things that I have learned from these, you know, sort of, and it sort of echoes a lot of my own thoughts, is, you know, we do look at the top of a mountain sometimes, like that's our goal, where we want to be, and it's very hard, it's very easy, sorry, to get disheartened when we don't achieve the things, because we live in this world where it's so easy to fake a lifestyle through social media, and everybody's doing better than you, and you might have friends who, but you genuinely don't know somebody's personal battles. You know, like some people can look very, very much amazing and happy on the outset, but in reality that you don't know what they're dealing with. And sometimes, you know, I feel that's why I try to be as raw and honest, and don't edit these videos like as much as, you know, sort of like in terms of if I make a mess or I say something, or like maybe there's something I should have really taken out. It is what it is, because you can't do that in life, and that's why, you know, it's okay to suck and start again, because you just keep going. You like, I do watch my videos back, and it feels I've got better with it, but like I have to sort of understand that, like, well, maybe I could do that differently, or you stuttered a little bit, or you know, you lingered too much on one subject and things like that. But the idea is to keep these as short, you know, to about 20 minutes. Like I say, I'm going to start, you know, sort of once today's over and I've got out of this place and I don't have the attention residue, which is something that, you know, that I've picked up in the last book, Hyperfocus, where when you haven't quite finished a task and you're moving on to the next task, you have this thing called attention residue. So, you know, and that will distract you from being able to put your full attention. The last two books have all a bit, if I could hone in on one major lesson from these two books, is it's getting rid of all this background crap out of it, that whether that's social media, whether that's 900 emails in your email box at work, or, you know, 9,000 emails, whether it's, you know, people just dropping by your office, you know, like, or dropping by your desk to, like, just basically, people are like time vacuums, because sometimes they don't want to do their work, so they need to go and find a reason to try and sort of distract themselves. And that's the case of like deep work, where you like, if you can put yourself into this hyper focused deep work, whatever you want to call it, where you just hone in on a task, you'll find you'll achieve more. And that's one of the things that I do want to do with this page. I do want to achieve more. I do want to help other people achieve more, you know, and it'll take time. You know, it's disheartening sometimes. I get very few views on these videos, but I also at the same time know that it's about consistency. It's about keeping doing it, and going back to what I said about living in the same place for 4 years, you know, it is about that consistency, because that is where I've anchored myself. And I think this, going again back to the point of like potentially moving, you know, overseas, is I've got a potential to make things, you know, all right here. I don't have to necessarily, but like at the minute, I've got too many things and too many plates spinning in my head, and I need to refine these things down. You know, stick to my work and barbering, get my degree done, and not throw another worry in, you know, like this whole visa situation in, because it's just another thing that's going to really, really vacuum my time and my energy and my attention. So maybe we just need to get to May and then see where we're at with that. Anyway, like I say, I'm trying to keep these to like 20 minutes. If you don't mind subscribing, that would be amazing. If you don't, that's fine. It's not for everybody. And I do promise you, we will get more on track with like actual things that aren't just about me and stuff in my life. But I thought I'd just sort of like let you know about what's going on and why, you know, I'm not quite hitting the mark that I want to with this. But the idea is to start looking at these things and introducing something that, if you're a reader or you're not a reader, then you're going to get something out of it. You might think, well, actually, I think I'll give that book a read. Or you might just take whatever lessons that, you know, I'm talking about in, you know, because everyone's different. You know, success is subjective at the end of the day. And I think that's something that we could all abide by. You know, we can all look at and go, just because I don't like that doesn't mean they shouldn't like it. Anyway, toodle pip, goodbye, see you later.